How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Data here, and welcome back to another career simulation here on NHL 23. Today, going through the career of the 5th overall pick in yesterday's 2023 NHL Draft. Yesterday for me, a couple days ago for you, David Reinbacher, the Austrian right-handed 6'3" defenseman drafted out of Switzerland by the Montreal Canadiens. A lot of people think that the Canadiens should have gone with Michkov, and you know what? I see the argument. I'm not here to sell you on Reinbacher. I'm not here to give a whole scouting report on him, but I do think that he was a very good selection, the best defenseman in this draft class, the most NHL-ready defenseman in this class, possibly one of the most NHL-ready players of the whole class as well. Over in Switzerland, playing in the league against men at 18 years of age, playing huge minutes, scoring 22 points in 46 games. He loves using his body and his size, but doesn't allow his aggression to get in the way of playing sound defense. I think the Canadiens are going to love him in their organization on that right side. On the left side, you already have Gooley, you have Hudson, you have other prospects. On the right side, I think this fills one of the last holes the Canadiens really had organizationally. So we'll be running through his career today, seeing what he does with the Canadiens, how long does he stick with the team, does he lead them to Stanley Cups, does he win Norris trophies, what kind of player does he turn into? As always, please do take it with a grain of salt, as I have no control over the simulation. Reinbacher will be put into the Canadiens organization. I'm going to try to get the Habs to draft him. Then after that, it is out of my hands. Whether they bury him in the AHL or use him on the top pair, I have no control over that. But I did go ahead and create him as a 79 overall with medium elite potential. If you're new to NHL and you don't quite know what 79 overall means, it's the same range as other defensemen who were drafted this highly, such as Jake Sanderson, Simon Nemec, and David Jiricek, and it also equates to around fringe NHL status. The hallmarks of his game are definitely his physical abilities at 4-star physical already, 88 strength, 86 aggressiveness. He has 3.5-star defense out of the draft, all very well-rounded. Just his senses, he has to work on that a little bit. The offensive awareness, most importantly, as he has the ability, 85 passing, but he has to utilize it a little bit more. His X factors, his zone ability is back at ya, and his superstar abilities are no contest, quick pick, and shutdown. So with all that understood, we can go ahead and hop into the 20-some-year simulation of David Reinbacher's NHL career. Unfortunately, we just can't do everything super realistic. Like Michkov won't be on the Flyers probably. Fantilli probably won't be on the Blue Jackets. But I'll do my best to try and keep things as realistic as possible. Give ourselves a fun picture, maybe just of, 10% of what could be in the future. So if you enjoy this simulation, be sure to leave a like and let me know which simulation you want to see next. And don't forget to subscribe to be made aware of all of those uploads, as well as our ongoing NHL 23 franchise mode series, breaking news and analysis in the real world of hockey, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the 2023 NHL Entry Draft. And with the 5th overall selection in the 2023 draft, the Canadiens go ahead and select David Reinbacher, medium elite, 79 overall, as we've already seen. All the same attributes as the beginning, I believe, as well. It was a very convoluted mess to get to this point. There are teams drafting where they're not actually supposed to be, and unfortunately, in the EA gatekeeping world where we can't customize whatever we want, I had to get a little bit creative and do some moves to make it happen. So in this universe, I do get Bedard to the Blackhawks, Fantilli going to the Flyers, Michkov going to the Red Wings, but David Reinbacher in the Montreal Canadiens organization, and we're ready to see what happens in his rookie season. Will he jump straight to the NHL? Will he be in Laval? Let's see what year number 1 has in store. In year number 1, David Reinbacher is signed to his ELC and will come over from Switzerland to play with the Canadiens' AHL affiliate, the Laval Rocket. Still a 79 overall. None of his attributes have changed, but he is now listed as a top 6 defenseman. He'll get top pair minutes in Laval with Jordan Harris on his left. Lane Hudson's here as well. You can't send him back to university in EA land. Arbor Jacki and Jordan Harris would probably be up in the NHL, but Baudin, Norlinder, other good prospects who are here in Laval. So I like who Reinbacher is surrounded by. Let's see what he can do in his first year in North America, getting those top pair minutes. Whew, a nice little slap in the face welcome to North America for David Reinbacher, as the Laval Rocket finished 3rd last in the AHL, 30th out of 32 teams in year number 1, going 29, 34, and 9. David Reinbacher played a full 72-game season. You know what? He didn't do so bad, all things considered. 6 goals and 25 assists, 31 points for the now 19-year-old. He was only a -9 on a team where a lot of players have double-digit negatives. And he was also logging 23.5 minutes of ice time per night as a rookie on one of the worst teams in the league. I think that's good, all things considered. He also threw in 135 hits and 137 blocked shots, so averaging about 2 hits and 2 blocks per night. David Reinbacher, I'd call this a success. He is still a 79 overall at the end of this first season. I believe all of his attributes still look the same as when he was drafted, but hopefully we'll have good growth over the offseason, and we'll see if he was impressive enough to get the call up to the NHL for your number 2. Year number 2, and David Reinbacher is ready to make his NHL debut with the Canadiens. He ate big minutes in Laval last year, and now he's ready to play top 4 minutes in the NHL this year. He is up to an 83 overall, 4-star defense, 5-star physical as well. Can't wait to see what he does with the Habs. He's playing on the second pair with Mike Matheson. Caden Gooley's up to an 85. Philip Hronek joining the Canadiens in free agency. Justin Barron, Lane Hudson. Look at this blue line in Montreal. The forwards, if you're interested in 2024-25, Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield on the top line. Patrice Bergeron finds his way to Montreal, as happens more often than not in franchise mode. Kirby Dach at an 85. Newhook still at an 81, unfortunately. Emil Heineman. As a Canadiens fan, I have a vested interest a little bit, but there's the forward core and goaltending, Caden Primo and Jake Allen. That's where it might be a bit of a struggle. But David Reinbacher, ready to make his NHL debut in the top 4 in Montreal. In year number 2, Reinbacher's rookie season, the Canadiens just miss out on the postseason due to a very strong Eastern Conference. The Habs finished 13th best in the league with a record of 41, 33, and 8. Meanwhile, you had the 20th place team making the postseason, so a weaker Western Conference here in 2024-25. But I can see the Canadiens having that type of season a couple years from now. Reinbacher had the type of rookie season that I think many people would expect. He played a fully healthy 82-game season, 5 goals and 20 assists for him, a 25-point year while being a plus 10 in the top 4. He was averaging over 20.5 minutes of ice time per night as a rookie, and also threw in, 117 hits and 92 blocked shots. At the end of year number 1 in the NHL and his second year in North America, he's still an 83 overall, no growth during the season. Let's see what happens over the offseason headed into his sophomore year in the league. Year number 2, David Reinbacher's sophomore season, and he is now up to an 85 overall at 20 years of age, listed as a top 4 defenseman. 90 shot blocking, 92 stick checking, and the 5-star physical with 94 strength and all these other attributes that you can see along with it. 90 discipline as well, despite all the physical. Love to see that. He'll be playing second pair with Caden Gooley. You would think his eventual spot is first pair with Lane Hudson, who's now playing first pair with Philip Hronek. We'll see how much longer that takes for Reinbacher to overtake Hronek, but at the moment, I'm sure he's very content playing with Caden Gooley. This is a very good Canadiens team. Sean Farrell scored 31 goals last season. That's a scary top 6. Vitek Vanacek as starting goaltender, no longer Caden Primo and Jake Allen. If you're a Canadiens fan like I am, you'll be very excited to see what the Habs do in this year number 2 simulation, and whether or not Reinbacher will have success on the second pair. But, of course, it makes perfect sense that in year number 2, when the Canadiens look at their scariest, they miss out on the postseason, finishing 21st in the NHL with a record of 37, 34, and 11. It's just so odd to me, as of course you have the Caulfields and the Suzukis at the top, but Gallagher scores only 22 points. I understand he's 33, but come on. Lane Hudson, who now has 5-star puck skills, 99 passing, 93 offensive awareness, only scores 33 points. Really odd. But regardless, David Reinbacher in his sophomore season plays in 79 games, registering 6 goals and 14 assists for 20 points while being a -5. He was logging just under 19 minutes of ice time per night, so a bit of a step back actually in his ice time, and he threw 95 hits while blocking 88 shots. After his sophomore season, which was a bit of a disappointment, Reinbacher is now up to an 86 overall with all these attributes looking great. We'll get a better update of them after this offseason, headed into what will be his 3rd NHL season and 4th year in North America. Year number 4 for David Reinbacher, and technically he would need a new contract by now, but because the game does not use up ELC years for a player who's under a certain age, he is now on the final year of his ELC. Despite it being 4 years in North America, it's his 3rd year in the NHL, and he'll need a new contract after this season. He's up to an 87 overall at the age of 21. 5-star defense, 5-star physical, and the other attributes coming along very nicely. Second pair with Caden Gooley once again. Hudson at an 87's up on that top pair with Philip Hronek. The lineup is great in Montreal. Heineman's at an 84. Farrell's at an 87. Joshua Roy made the lineup now. So hopefully it is a postseason berth for the Habs, and it will be a first time for Reinbacher, who will be hoping not only for a better individual performance, but hoping to be given more minutes than last year. In year number 4, Reinbacher and the Canadiens finished 21st in the NHL for a 2nd consecutive season, once again missing out on the postseason with a record of 38, 32, and 12. Reinbacher had a career high in goals and points while missing 4 games due to injury, 10 goals, 16 assists, and 26 points in 78 games. He was a plus 12 and also was registering 10 seconds shy of 20 minutes of ice time per night. He was also able to throw 118 hits while blocking 104 shots. At the end of his entry-level deal, Reinbacher is an 87 overall, listed as a top 4 defenseman with a 5-star defense and physical. It almost feels like this is just part of the process in most of our career simulations where the prospect has a slow start and then goes meteoric. But through 4 years in North America and 3 years in the league, Reinbacher doesn't have too much to show for it just yet, but he has been a trusted piece on the blue line. Let's see what kind of deal he and the Habs can hammer out over the 2027 offseason and get back for year number 5. Year number 5 now, and some big changes in Montreal as Philip Hronek's contract expired, leaving the top spot open on the right side in Montreal for David Reinbacher to take. He is now top pair D at 22 years of age with Lane Hutson at an 89 on his left. This is what we've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. I can't wait to see how he simulates. He's up to an 88 overall, 5-star defense, 5-star physical, 89 passing as well, which is very nice. He signed a 3-year deal over the offseason, paying him $8.2 million per season. It's a great blue line here in Montreal. Reinbacher is going to get to eat those big minutes that he's been waiting for. Here's how the forwards look for the Canadiens in 2027-28. Year number 5, his 4th in the NHL. Let's see if Reinbacher can feast. In year number 5, the Canadiens improved by 1 spot as they finished 20th in the NHL with a record of 41, 36, and 5, but once again missing out on the postseason as the Western Conference was stronger, the 21st place Blackhawks making it in. Reinbacher had a huge role this season as he played in all 82 games and registered a new career high in points, 7 goals and 28 assists for 35 points. He was a plus 21 and was logging almost 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. This is the most realistic thing of the simulation so far. This guy just loves to eat up those minutes. He threw 161 hits, blocked 103 shots, and he was looking very good in his first year in a top pair role. Still at an 88 overall with his attributes looking like this. He got a good taste of top pair action. 2 more years on his deal, but the Canadiens got to start coming together as a team to make the postseason if they want to convince Reinbacher to sign long term. Year number 6, and Reinbacher maintains his spot on the top pair here in Montreal. Gonna have his 2nd season playing with Lane Hutson, who is a 90 overall on his left. Incredible attributes from him as well. But what matters here is David Reinbacher. He is at an 88 overall at 23 years of age, 93 stick checking, 95 strength, 94 body checking. He is a menace out there. And he played some of the most minutes in the NHL last season, so I'll be curious to see if he can get above 25, even 26 once again this season. The Canadiens, again, building themselves a great team. Brodin, William Karlsson joining the team. I love the Canadiens on paper, but they're still trying to make the postseason for the first time with Reinbacher as a part of the lineup. So let's see if year number 6 is the year to make it happen. Oh, this is really hurting me as a Canadiens fan. As in year number 6, Reinbacher and the Canadiens finished 4th worst in the league, a 29th place finish with a record of 34, 40, and 7. The scoring from certain players is just so inconsistent. It's crazy here in the simulation. Like Slavkovsky getting 60, 70 points some years. This year, just 12 goals, 47 points. Whatever. Regardless, David Reinbacher, once again playing top pair. He registered 30 points in 80 games with 11 goals and 19 assists. He was also a plus 24 on a very bad team. By far the best plus minus on the team, and while logging over 25 minutes of ice time per night once again. On top of that, 146 hits and 110 block shots for the 24-year-old Austrian, who maintains his 88 overall status and all of these attributes headed into what will be the final year of his 3-year extension that he signed. So after some very disappointing seasons with the Canadiens, this team has to think about some overhauls to the lineup itself. Great players on paper, but come on now. Headed into year number 7, let's see what Kent Hughes has in store. Year number 7, 2029-30, and Reinbacher and Hutson are back at it again as a dynamic duo on the top pair in Montreal. The Minute Muncher is into his final season of his 3-year extension. He will be an unrestricted free agency at the end of this year, as well as Nick Suzuki. So we'll see what the Canadiens do when it comes to the 2030 offseason. Reinbacher, 5-star defense, 5-star physical. His attributes haven't really changed much in a couple of years now, but he's sitting there with medium league potential, getting all those minutes with some good team performances, maybe a postseason run. He could definitely get into the 90 overalls. So let's hope that in the final year of this deal, before he has to make a big decision in the 2030 offseason, the Canadiens can finally make the dance. The Canadiens' curse continues as in year number 7, the Habs miss out on the postseason once again, finishing 27th in the league. Not a great record when you have your captain and possibly your top defenseman or one of your top defensemen on an expiring contracts. 33, 40, and 9 was their record. Reinbacher had a difficult season here, finishing with his worst plus-minus of his career so far. Not the worst on the team, but the worst of his career, and still not too hot. He played a full 82-game season, scoring 7 goals and 21 assists, 28 points with a negative 15, all while eating up over 25 minutes of ice time per night once again. He threw 158 hits and blocked 132 blocked shots. My goodness. But unfortunately, not enough for the Canadiens to make the postseason. Just not enough scoring, I suppose, despite having a good first line on paper. Reinbacher will potentially hit unrestricted free agency as an 88 overall who was making $8.2 million. All of those same attributes that have pretty much stagnated for the last little bit without much success on this team. He has potential to do a lot better. He's doing great, but he could do even more if he was on a better team. So we'll see what the 2030 offseason has in store headed into year number 8. Year number 8, and Reinbacher is back in Montreal, signing a 4-year extension with the Habs, paying him $11.31 million per season. Keep in mind, in 2030, the salary cap is close to $100 million, but he's getting paid over $45 million for 4 more years with the Canadiens. Not really committing long term, though, so I wonder if he's still hesitant about that. But he's back on the top pair with Lane Hudson on his left. The Canadiens themselves, if you're curious, still struggling a little bit to find that scoring depth, I suppose. Mika Zibanejad's here at a 79 overall. But we'll see if the Canadiens can finally make the postseason in Reinbacher's 7th year with the team. He's still at an 88 overall, still those same attributes, still medium league potential. He could jump up so much more if the team's success would just follow suit. Wow. The Habs remain locked out of the postseason in year number 8 as the Canadiens finish dead last in the league with a record of 23, 46, and 13, scoring the least amount of goals for per game in the league by far, and again, only 23 wins. I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Cole Caulfield getting 21 goals and 49 points despite being an 89 overall with 5-star shooting. Like, does the game just hate these guys? I don't know what. Slavkovsky, first line, over 20 minutes of ice time per night, 87 overall, and he scores 12 goals and 33 points. I've seen some teams get shafted by the simulation before, but this has to be one of the all-time worst. Is it the goaltending? What's going on here? Philip Gustafsson and 2 random backups who are in such low overalls. I really don't know what to say. But David Reinbacher does have a career year as he ties his career high in goals, new career high in assists and points as he scores 44 points in 80 games. Good for him. But he is a negative 34, which is a career worst, 71 penalty minutes, which is a career high. And he was doing that while logging 24.5 minutes of ice time per night. Throw in 167 hits and 124 blocked shots for the 88 overall 26-year-old defenseman, who looks great on paper, but man, oh man, was that a tough year here in Montreal. Hopefully it leads to a good draft pick and a quick turnaround, because Reinbacher is signed on for 3 more years now after this one, and he's going to want to see good success if he's going to sign on again in unrestricted free agency. Year number 9, and David Reinbacher is now at the highest overall of his career, 89 overall, and listed as a top 2 defenseman, 92 defensive awareness, the 5-star physical, 5-star defense, most of the shooting, puck skills, skating, none of that has really changed as of late. I think in the real world, his skating will come along more than that, while maybe the offensive abilities will continue to lag behind. But when it comes to the defense and the physical, I do think that those are fairly accurate. Reinbacher in the top pair, once again with his good buddy Lane Hudson, who is on the final year of his deal, so we'll see what happens beyond this season. I'm sure Hudson wants to see some success in Montreal as well. Here's the lineup if you're curious for the forwards. 2031-32, let's hit it. Wow, this is really something. This is really something. As in year number 9, the Canadiens finish last in the NHL, now in consecutive seasons, with 39 points and a record of 18, 61, and 3. Easily the worst season in Canadiens history of any season that's more than like 60 games, and the least amount of wins that they've gotten since numbers from the 1930s. The simulation just hates this team. Look at these negatives. Oh my goodness, I don't understand it. Reinbacher, a negative 68? Oh my goodness, 7 goals, 12 assists, 19 points, and a negative 68 in 82 games for David Reinbacher, playing over 25 minutes of ice time per night, 179 hits, and 132 blocked shots. I am at a loss. What was the goaltending? Gustafsson, 85 overall, and he goes 13, 42, and 1, just allowing over 4 goals per night. I don't know what to say. And it's not like players in the league aren't scoring. I have it on high scoring as I usually do for career simulations. Zegras 122 points. Brady Tkachuk 115 points. Players are scoring. For Caulfield and Suzuki to be simulating as they are, this is some deep, deep EA voodoo. We got to keep going here. I could talk about this all day. Reinbacher maintains his 89 overall status somehow, and his attributes don't seem to have changed. He'll be headed into the last couple of years of his contract. Lane Hutson, does he re-sign? Who knows? The Habs need a huge overhaul headed into Reinbacher's 10th season. Year number 10, and after what was possibly the worst season in franchise history, the Canadiens had a huge overhaul into the 2032 offseason. They had over $30 million to use, I think close to $40 million, and Lane Hutson was re-signed to a contract paying him over $11 million for 4 seasons. Jack Eichel is here. Philip Forsberg is here. 2 prospects who are both second overall picks, Bear Tucker and Dylan Scott, are both in the organization as well. A lot of nice X factors, hopefully a better performance than last season. Igor Shesterkin now between the pipes as well as a 90 overall. So I guess Kent Hughes is fired. Whoever was in charge said we're definitely spending some money. David Reinbacher coming off of the worst season of his career as well, points wise and definitely plus minus wise. Still an 89 overall with his buddy Lane on the top pair. His attributes have stagnated, but as we've seen, he has the ability to get up to close to 50 points a year when the team is clicking. So let's hope for more of that in this 10th season. In year number 10, the heavens open up, and the Montreal Canadiens make the postseason for the first time since 2021. Now in 2033, they are not only in the postseason, but they are division and conference champions, making the postseason with 113 points and a record of 54, 23, and 5. How about that for a big turnaround since last season's 18 wins? A big hats off to the new GM in Montreal. Oh man, and David Reinbacher unfortunately faced a major injury for the first time in his career this season as he played in 58 out of 82 games. And in those 58 games, he registered 6 goals and 25 assists, 31 points, which would have been an 82-game pace of 44 points. That would have tied his career high. After being a negative 68 last year, he was a plus 33 this year, all while logging just 5 seconds shy of 25 minutes of ice time per night. Throw in 121 hits and 76 blocked shots through those 58 games, and Reinbacher makes the postseason for the first time in his NHL career. In the 2033 postseason, in the Big Dance for the first time since 2021, the Eastern Conference champion Canadiens go all the way to Game 7 but lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the team that ends up winning the Eastern Conference but losing in 6 themselves to the Chicago Blackhawks for the Stanley Cup. Making his first ever postseason appearance, Reinbacher played in 4 out of 7 games as he was still injured for the first 3 games of the postseason, and he logged a goal and 2 assists and 3 points in 4 games. He was a +2, all while eating 23-42 of ice time per night. 5 hits and 7 blocks in those 4 games, getting a little taste of the postseason for the first time, and I'm sure there will be more to come. Reinbacher, after this 10th season and 9th in the NHL, is still an 89 overall. He got to taste the postseason. He was on a very good winning team. Next season will be the final year of his contract. So let's see if the Canadiens can repeat that regular season success, but in year number 11, have a deep postseason run. Also, shout out to Reinbacher's defensive partner, Lane Hutson, who wins his first career James Norris Memorial Trophy in 2033. Year number 11 for David Reinbacher, his 10th season in the NHL, back in that top pair with Lane Hutson at a 91 overall coming off a Norris Trophy win. Jérémy Poirier, welcome to Montreal, signed for $11.5 million. That may really hurt the team moving forward, putting them in a tough cap spot. Reinbacher, speaking of money, he's in the final year of his $11.3 million extension. We'll see what he does in the 2034 offseason. But for right now, the Habs are coming off of a great Eastern Conference Championship season. The first postseason berth of Reinbacher's North American career, so morale is high and we'll be hoping for more in 2033-34. In year number 11, the Canadiens are back in business, once again making the postseason, this time finishing 4th best in the NHL and tied for the most wins in the league with 53. Their record was 53, 27, and 2, giving them 108 points. A nice, fully healthy season from David Reinbacher, and that means new career highs in assists and points. 82 games played, 9 goals, 49 assists, and 58 points from the Austrian. More than Lane Hutson even, who scored 50 and 76. Reinbacher was also a plus 28 while logging 7 seconds shy of 25 minutes per night. Throw in 159 hits and 104 blocked shots for the 29-year-old who was on the second postseason appearance of his career. In the postseason, the Canadiens went on a great run, defeating the Panthers in 6 in round number 1, avenging themselves against the Maple Leafs in 7 in round number 2, but falling in the Eastern Conference Final in 6 games to the Islanders, who went on to lose to the Sharks for the 2034 Cup. Reinbacher did what he does so well, playing in all 19 games, registering 3 goals and 4 assists for 7 points. He was a plus 5 while logging 24.08 of ice time per night and adding in 32 hits and 25 blocked shots. After this, not just taste of the postseason, but a great run to the Eastern Conference Final, David Reinbacher is an unrestricted free agent headed into the 2034 offseason, but he is a 90 overall, the highest that he's ever been. 5-star physical, defense, 4-star skating, senses, and puck skills, 3.5-star shooting. You can see his offensive awareness, his poise, a few other attributes going higher than they have ever been. I think he'd be happy to stay in Montreal. I think the Canadiens want to keep him. It may just be a question of money headed into year number 12, a season in which Reinbacher and the Canadiens will want to continue progressing forward. Year number 12, and David Reinbacher is ready to commit here in Montreal, signing a huge deal in the 2034 offseason. A 6-year contract paying him $14.895 million per season, just shy of $90 million over 6 years. Now keep in mind, the current NHL salary cap is $83.5 million. In 2034, it's at about $110 million. So take that with a grain of salt, but still a huge AAV on David Reinbacher, who eats those minutes like a starved animal. 90 overall, 5-star defense and physical headed into this season, coming off of the best season of his career points-wise as well, and the deepest postseason run of his career. He is on the top pair with Lane Hutson, who's also costing a lot of money. So is Jordan Spence. So is Jérémie Poirier. A lot of money on the blue line, which has forced the Canadiens to have some 70s, even a 67 here on the 4th line in 2034-35. But again, coming off of one of the best seasons in recent history, let's see if the Habs can build on that. In year number 12, Reinbacher and the Canadiens are back in the postseason for a 3rd consecutive year as they finish 9th best in the NHL with a record of 48, 31, and 3. Reinbacher scored 40-plus points in back-to-back seasons for the first time in his career, registering 8 goals and 38 assists for 46 points in 76 games, putting him on an 82-game pace of 50 points, a plus 27, all while logging about 24.5 minutes of ice time per night, throwing in 162 hits and 92 blocked shots, the first time in a while he doesn't get to 100-plus in that category as he heads into the postseason. And in the 2035 postseason, the Montreal Canadiens are in the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 2021, 14 years later, looking for their first cup since 1993, 42 years ago. The Canadiens took down the Red Wings in round number 1 in 6 games, faced the Leafs once again in round number 2, and once again came out in 7 games. In the Eastern Conference Final, the Canadiens were down 3 games to 2 against the Capitals. They fought back and won in 7, and now they're in the Cup final against the Blackhawks. Coincidentally, the team that I have user control over in this simulation. The Canadiens were up 3 games to 1. The Hawks won the last 2. We're headed to Game 7. I said this is such a rare occurrence. We might as well go in and watch the slow sim. I'd love to rig it and give it to the Canadiens, but you know we got to do it honest. It was 3-1 Habs. Now it's 3-3. Game 7 of the 2035 Stanley Cup Final. June 11th, 2035 at the Bell Center. Hawks and Habs for the 2035 title. First period, 1-0 Canadian Slafkovsky. Second period, still 1-0 Canadian. Shots 31-20 for the Habs. 1-1 Hellenius tying it up against Shesterkin, who's still the goaltender here in Montreal. Power play for the Canadiens. That's killed off by the Blackhawks. Final 10 minutes of this third period of Game 7, and we're all tied up. Power play Hawks late. It's killed off by the Canadiens. final 3 minutes now. Will we head to overtime with 40 seconds to go? Yes, we will. Game 7 overtime for the Stanley Cup. Shots 36-29 for the Habs. Let's hop in and see who takes it. Game 7 overtime in Montreal. The Bell Center is hopping. Connor Bedard wants his cup here in Chicago as well. Let's see who takes it. Ottoson scores! The Blackhawks win it in overtime! No, within the first minute and a bit! Heartbreak for David Reinbacher and the Canadiens as the Hawks win in Game 7 overtime. Connor Bedard wins the Conn Smythe and raises the Stanley Cup as captain of the Hawks. Oh man, anticlimactic and too bad here in Montreal. So the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup in 7 games. The Habs, over their last 3 postseason appearances, have gone first round exit, conference final exit, now Game 7 overtime cup final exit. Just getting closer and closer every time, and hopefully next year is the year. David Reinbacher, of course, played a huge role in the postseason, but he was actually out for Game 7, it looks like. He played 25 out of 27 games, and it says he's still injured, so I would assume he missed Game 6 and 7. Oh, wow, that has huge implications. He scored 13 points in 25 games and was a +7. And in the postseason, he was averaging about, a little bit lower than usual, but still 23 minutes of ice time per night. Huge spot to be filled with him out. 51 hits and 31 blocked shots over those 25 games. Reinbacher, unfortunately, still searching for his first Stanley Cup championship. Injured for Games 6 and 7 in the final. He would have been just heartbroken to be out of those games. But headed into his 13th season and 12th with the Canadiens, he is now 30 years of age, still at his 90 overall status. All the attributes looking as good as ever. He's making money. He signed on long term. This team just keeps getting better and better. Hopefully, next year's the year. Year number 13, and David Reinbacher maintains his 90 overall status headed into 2035-36. I love that most of the core here in Montreal has stuck together. Reinbacher, Hudson, Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, all still here in 2035-36. Usually the AI does all kinds of crazy things, and it has, but I'm glad that the core is still around. Reinbacher still at a 90 overall with those attributes that haven't really changed too much, as I've said a few times now. Strength, sometimes 95, sometimes 96. Shot blocking, sometimes 91, sometimes 92, but this is who he is at this point at 30 years of age. We know what he can do. We know what he's done. Let's see more of it in his 12th season in the NHL. Oh man, too bad. In year number 13, after making the postseason for 3 consecutive years, the Canadiens just miss out, 2 points shy of catching the Florida Panthers. The Canadiens finished 20th in the league with a record of 40, 34, and 8. Check this out though, Reinbacher was 1 point shy of tying his career high. On top of that, Slavkovsky was point per game before getting injured, and Scott scored 62 goals on 117 points, so a great season in Montreal, but just a few things that didn't go their way. Reinbacher in 80 games, as I mentioned, 10 goals and 47 assists, 57 points, 1 shy of his career high. He was a +27 while logging 10 seconds shy of 25 minutes per night, 145 hits and 99 blocks. The now 31-year-old Austrian will head into year number 14, still as a 90 overall, still looking great, and after having finally tasted so much postseason success, this season had to sting. Year number 14, and we keep on rolling. Reinbacher at a 90 overall on the top pair with his good friend Lane Hudson as an 89 overall himself. Still the 5-star defense, physical, and also 5-star puck skills, as Reinbacher was working hard in the garage this offseason. 93 passing, 91 deking and puck control, 90 hand-eye, went to a little skills camp, and now he's coming out with 5-star puck skills. Look at that. Maybe that will help to boost his offensive numbers with a very talented top 6 as well. Possibly Nick Suzuki's last season. So after the Canadiens missed the postseason last year and had 3 consecutive berths in the 3 seasons before that, let's see if 2036-37 will be a return to the promised land. A lovely year number 14 as the Montreal Canadiens finish atop the NHL in 2036-37. Reinbacher being a part of his first President's Trophy winning team in his career. 112 points for the Habs as they go 51, 21, and 10. Reinbacher continues to be consistently in that 40-plus point range as he's scored 3 goals and 41 assists for 44 points through 73 games, a 49-point pace over 82 games, a career low in goals though. He was more of a playmaker this season. That was one of his highest assist totals. He was also a plus 30, all while logging 24.08 of ice time per night, lower than his usually closer to 24.5 or 25. Not a huge discrepancy there. Add in 124 hits and 100 block shots for the now 32-year-old as he is headed into the postseason for the 4th time in the last 5 years. In the postseason, the Canadiens have a great show, but they fall in round number 2. They defeat the Bruins in round number 1 in 7 games, but then fall in 6 to the Panthers. The Panthers go on to push the Blackhawks to 7 games in the Stanley Cup final, but the Blackhawks come away with another Stanley Cup championship. None of the Canadiens players were huge pluses when it comes to the plus-minus category. Reinbacher through 13 games was a -6. That's quite surprising. 1 goal and 5 assists, 6 points through 13 games for him. Hudson had 7 points as he won his 2nd Norris Trophy in his career in the 2037 awards. Reinbacher was averaging 27.5 minutes of ice time per night. Oh my goodness. Throw in 33 hits and 18 block shots in those 13 games. And Reinbacher heads into his 15th year, now down from 90 overall to 89 overall. Slight regression will start to creep in due to age. That's usually seen in the skating and a little bit in the physical, but I'm sure the defense will be maintained. His puck skills have dropped back down to 4 stars from 5 stars. His little boost from summer camp didn't last too long. So despite it being a 2nd round exit, it was nice to see Reinbacher back in the postseason, and the Canadiens will want to build on that headed into 2037-38. All right, year number 15, and we're seeing somewhat heavy regression for the first time here, as Reinbacher is now starting the season as an 87 overall. His elite potential has dropped to top 4D potential. He's still listed as a top 2D, but his potential will bring his overall down unless he continues to have great statistical seasons. He still has his 5-star defense and 5-star physical, but everything else is starting to drop slowly. Even his physical, the 94-95 of aggressive and strength is now 91-93, for example. So we'll see if he can still do it. He's still playing the top role. He's still getting those minutes. It's going to depend on the team around him. Very interesting team here in Montreal. Mario Danny Pepin. All the French Canadians are going to love having him on board. But what they will love even more is having Matvei Michkov on board. The player that the Canadiens passed on to draft Reinbacher is now here in the Canadiens organization. He is signed for 4 years, almost $15 million per year. It is the post-Nick Suzuki era as he has just retired. So let's see how this team does in year number 15, Reinbacher's 14th NHL season. In year number 15, the Canadiens once again finish atop the NHL, now winning back-to-back President's Trophies. 117 points for the Habs, going 55, 20, and 7. How about this for scoring? Scott had 116 points, Michkov had 48 goals and 102 points, Slavkovsky 84. There were times when he was getting like 30 points, remember that? Lane Hudson 64 points, but of course our good friend David Reinbacher, he ended the season injured, unfortunately again. These late season injuries. Despite that, he scored 11 goals and 40 assists for 51 points in 80 games. He was a plus 29 while logging 24-15 of ice time per night. He threw in 128 hits and 91 blocked shots. Hopefully the injury isn't too severe headed into the postseason, as the Canadiens will be hoping that this is finally their year. But oh my goodness, in the 2038 postseason, the Canadiens, as President's Trophy winners, were swept out of round number 1 by the last team to make it in the East, the 2nd wildcard spot team, the New Jersey Devils. The Devils swept the Canadiens out of round number 1, but then fell in 6 in round number 2 to the Red Wings, who went on to lose to the Ducks in the Stanley Cup final. Very shocking to see, I have to say, especially after Hudson won another Norris Trophy. There were some other awards here. Danny Pepin won the Calder Trophy. Scott won the Hart, the Art Ross, and the Ted Lindsay. He was held pointless through 4 games. Ridiculous. Speaking of pointless, Reinbacher, no points in 4 games, despite having a +1 at the very least. He logged 26.5 minutes of ice time per night, and he had 7 hits and 7 blocked shots through those 4 games. At the end of this 15th year in North America, Reinbacher is now 33 years of age, back up to an 88 overall. Attributes are a bit wonky all over the place, but he still maintains his 5-star defense and 5-star physical, headed into what will be his 15th season in the NHL. and 16th year overall. The Canadiens have had some great regular season success as of late, and I like the team that's here, but getting swept out of round number 1 is going to sting. Year number 16, Reinbacher's 15th season in the NHL with the Canadiens, and he has now dropped down to an 86 overall, still listed as a top 2 defenseman, but as you can see, 4.5-star defense, still the 5-star physical, but most of the attributes are dropping. The puck skills down to 4 stars as well, the skating going down, but as long as he's eating those minutes, blocking those shots, throwing those hits, his value is still as high as ever. Lane Hutson still on his left at an 89 overall. Hudson and Slavkovsky, the last 2 original Canadians that he started with, as Cole Caulfield has left the organization as well now. But big names on that first line: Michkov, Scott, now this new guy, Petri Peltonen, who was the 3rd overall pick in 2025. Great. The Canadiens should still have a strong season coming off of back-to-back President's Trophies, but Reinbacher is still yet to raise that elusive Stanley Cup. In year number 16, the Canadiens finished 6th best in the NHL, but tied for 3rd most points at 102, as the Habs go 47, 27, and 8. David Reinbacher in his 15th NHL season plays a full 82 games for the first time since year number 11, 10 goals and 22 assists for 32 points in 82 games. Only a +1 though, surprising, all while logging over 25 minutes of ice time per night, back in that category for the first time in a few years. Throw in 130 hits and 100 block shots from the now 34-year-old Austrian, and we'll see you in the postseason. And while you never need to really count on Reinbacher for a ton of offense when you have Hudson and Michkov out there, it was the first time in 6 years that he did not score 44 points or more. But in the postseason, the Montreal Canadiens make it out of the second round, only to fall in the second round, beating the Maple Leafs once again in round number 1 in 5 games, but falling in 7 to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. They beat the Bruins in 5, the Hurricanes did, but then the Hurricanes and the Habs had a spirited 7-game series before the Hurricanes went on an 8-1 run to win the Stanley Cup, so at least the Canadiens did their best against the eventual champs. Crazy offense in those 12 games as Scott scored 21 points, Michkov scored 19 points, all the way down here to Reinbacher, who in 12 games scored 1 goal and 3 assists for 4 points. He was a +3 while logging. He loves ice time in the postseason. Yeah, 25-21 time on ice per game. Throw in 24 hits and 14 block shots through those 12 games. Reinbacher, now 34 years of age, down to an 83 overall, listed as a top 4 defenseman. As you know what, when you play that certain style of game, that's going to catch up to your body someday. 4-star physical and 4-star defense, everything else down between 3 and 3.5 stars. I'll be curious to see what happens over the offseason, maybe a little bump back to 84 or 85, but we are entering the end game, and next year will be the final year of Reinbacher's big extension that he signed a few years ago. And with what you think would likely be the final few seasons of his career, Reinbacher will want to put himself in the best position to win. So let's see what's going on headed into 2039-40. Year number 17, and despite dropping down to 83 overall, David Reinbacher is still playing top pair with Lane Hutson here in Montreal. 34 years of age, down to top 6 potential, so I would predict some more regression this season. 4-star defense, 4-star physical, everything else between 3 and 3.5 stars. Some tough stats out there: 82 hand-eye, 84 speed, which is quite low comparative to other players in the NHL. But I'm sure he's still going to throw the body and block a lot of shots, doing what he does best. The team here in Montreal isn't the greatest overall-wise. Still the big names out here like Scott, Michkov, and Peltonen. So we'll see if they can carry this team with Hudson and Reinbacher holding it down on the blue line in what may be both of their final seasons with the Canadiens, as Reinbacher's contract expires and Hudson's does as well. So the 2040 offseason could be a big one. Let's make year 17 a good one. What the? In year number 17, the Montreal Canadiens finished dead last in the NHL with a record of 29, 49, and 4 after making the postseason in 3 consecutive years, and they missed the postseason now just for the second time in the last 8 years, and they do it in great fashion, going, go big or go home, last place in the league. Reinbacher played in 81 out of 82 games and scored 4 goals and 32 assists for 36 points. He was a -4, finishing as a negative player for the first time in 8 years. Also, you'll notice Lane Hudson not here. He was traded at the deadline. So Reinbacher, Slavkovsky on expiring deals. Hudson's expiring deal already gone. Could be a bit of an overhaul time now here in Montreal. Reinbacher, despite the lower overall and the tough season, he was still out there for over 25 minutes of ice time per night, always being relied on as that force. And despite, again, the lower overall, still 129 hits and 109 blocked shots. At 35 years of age, after 17 years in North America and 16 with the Canadiens, Reinbacher is down to an 82 overall, listed as a top 4D. 3.5-star defense, 4-star physical. A lot of things are dropping, but as we saw this last season, he is still very capable. He won't get paid that same salary, but if he wants to stay in Montreal, I think that they could definitely use him on the blue line. Now the question will be, is he interested in ending his career on a bit of an accelerated retooling / rebuild, or does he look to go elsewhere in unrestricted free agency? How about this for a story? In year number 18, after 17 years with the Canadiens organization and 16 years with the Habs in the NHL, David Reinbacher hits unrestricted free agency and signs a 2-year deal with the Minnesota Wild, along with his buddy, the player that he's been on the same defensive pair as for almost his entire North American career, Lane Hutson, also signing a 2-year deal with the Minnesota Wild. 2 years, $8.85 for him. Reinbacher signing 2 years at $6.025 million, so just over $12 million for 2 seasons. He's now down to an 80 overall, though, with 7th D potential, so it could continue to drop quite rapidly. He's in all of his attributes between 3 and 4 stars. Physical at 4, defense at 3.5. A lot of stuff dropping pretty fast, including the skating, 83 acceleration, 83 speed. But we saw him last year play 25 minutes. We saw him still hit. We saw him still block. He reminds me of a Mark Giordano type of guy, as he's still doing it all in his older age, and he gets to play with his good friend Lane Hutson, now in a second pair role. The team here in Minnesota, I wouldn't say it's overly impressive, as you can see just by some of the overalls. If you're curious, Shane Wright is here, goaltending, an 83 overall, so nothing really to write home about too much. But Reinbacher and the Canadiens were going in different directions. No hard feelings. He moves on from the Habs after a long time with them. No Stanley Cups, unfortunately, but he still has a little bit of gas left in the tank, and let's see if that's enough to find that cup in year number 18. An unfortunate, but I bet very fun season for David Reinbacher in year number 18, as the Wild missed the postseason, finishing 29th in the league with a record of 34, 39, and 9. Reinbacher played in 77 out of 82 games and scored 4 goals and 16 assists for 20 points. His good buddy Lane Hutson scored 48 points this year. Look at that. He was a negative 16 though, so a negative player in back-to-back seasons in years 17 and 18 for the first time since years 8 and 9. Reinbacher on the second pair was averaging over 21 minutes of ice time per night, still a lot for the 36-year-old, and he was still able to throw 139 hits and block 101 shots. After this 18th season, Reinbacher drops to a 79 overall, still that 7th D potential, 3-star defense, 3-star skating, 3.5-star physical. I think he's still got it. No matter what his overall is, he's a certain type of player, and he'll keep doing what a lot of teams will pay good money for. So 1 year left on his deal. I would think he plays through it. Let's see what he decides in the 2041 offseason. Year number 19, Reinbacher and Hutson committed to 2 seasons. They're going to play 2 seasons. Reinbacher now 36 years of age. He's down to a 76 overall with AHL top 2D potential, listed as a minor league top 2 defender. But it doesn't matter. Like I'm saying, it doesn't matter the overall. I think he's still going to put up good numbers in terms of eating minutes, getting hits, blocking shots. He has 3-star everything. Yeah, 3-star everything. Shot blocking down to 80, 79 hand-eye, 82 aggressiveness, 82 strength, but I think he's still going to do an okay job here in Minnesota with his good, long-time friend Lane Hutson. The Wild missed the postseason last year. This is definitely the last chance. Let's see if we can end it Cinderella style here in 2041-42. How about this in year number 19? The Minnesota Wild surprise a lot of people and win 40 games to make the postseason. 15th best team in the NHL with 89 points and a record of 40, 33, and 9. Reinbacher still out here playing games like an animal. 76 out of 82 games played this season. 8 goals and 13 assists for 21 points in those games. Only a -1, we'll take that. While he was logging 19.5 minutes of ice time per night as a 76 overall. He is being trusted, and for good reason. 39 hits only, so that's something big that has changed, but still 94 blocked shots. So a part of his game that is just changing. Not as physical with the 82 aggressiveness and 80 body checking, but still able to block shots, and that is what he was asked to do this season. At 37 years of age, in the final year of his contract at 76 overall, this truly will be the last dance. In the 2042 postseason, the Wild go on a run, taking down the Coyotes in 7, the Predators in 6, but then falling in the Western Conference Final in 6 themselves to the Canucks, who went on to lose to the Islanders for the 2042 Cup. The Wild, who missed the postseason in 2041, didn't have the greatest team on paper, low overall defensemen, veterans on their blue line, win 40 games and make the top 4 in the league. Not a Stanley Cup for Reinbacher, but a very impressive journey. Reinbacher played in 16 out of 19 games and still logged 7 points in those games, looking very good. 2 goals and 5 assists and a -1. Lane Hutson, by the way, at the top, 19 points in 19 games. What a legend. In those 16 games, Reinbacher was logging almost 24 minutes of ice time per night. This guy is a mule. Johan Franzen, move over. This man is being fed minutes like a fattened calf, and he's eating them up like a starved hyena. In the 16 games in the postseason, he threw 16 hits and blocked 18 shots. At the end of his 19th season in North America and 18th season in the NHL, he grows back up to a 77 overall, but will be without a contract, on the downswing, still able to do a lot, but perhaps ready to call it a career after another long season that is definitely taking a toll on his body. And in the 2042 offseason, David Reinbacher does indeed call it a career. How poetic that not only is he retiring at the same time as Lane Hutson, but also at the same time as Juraj Slafkovsky. Those 3 guys were together for so long, but especially Lane Hutson, his blood brother through and through. Incredible careers from those 2. Reinbacher ends up going out with 1,411 games played, scoring 137 goals, 486 assists, and 623 points. Let's start breaking it all down now that his career has come to an end. He was a consistent player through and through when it came to his games played. Never less than 58 that one season, but remove that outlier, and he never played less than 73 games with the Canadiens. His goal scoring wasn't the hallmark of his game. Absolutely not. He did score 10 goals or more 6 times, but when it came to his assists, he got 40 assists or more 4 times, as high as 49 points, 49 assists, excuse me. But when it came to his point scoring, very consistently as well in that 30, high 30, mid 40, sometimes even into the 50 range when he was at the height of his career. 58 points, his career high. He ends as a plus 97, usually in that plus 20 range or so, but some tough seasons. Those 2 seasons of negative 68 and negative 34 are what ruined those numbers. Take those out and he's well into the hundreds, 200s. 837 penalty minutes over 1,411 games, as low as 17, 26, 32, and as high as 71, 66. Never one to be in the box too often, though. He took over 2,600 shots, shooting at 5.2%. 21 of his 137 goals were game winners. 18 of them came on the power play. 80 of his 623 points came on the power play as well. 3 shorthanded goals, 18 shorthanded points, and for his career, he ends up logging an average of 23.5 minutes of ice time per night. In his best seasons, he was always in that 25, 24 minute range. His career average is 23.31 purely because of his earlier seasons and then his later seasons. But at the heart of his career, 25 minute per night kind of guy. Very rare to come by that kind of player. The Canadiens are going to love to have that. Over 33,200 minutes played. No faceoffs ever taken in his career. 2,420 hits over the course of his career, as high as 179 and as low as 39, but really in his height, never really less than 100 or 95 one time. He also blocked 1,853 shots, his highest being 137, usually good for 100 plus, never lower than 76, and that was in the season in which he only played 58 games. Over the course of his career, he had 1,115 giveaways to 578 takeaways. That's pretty typical for a top pair defenseman in the EA simulation. In the postseason, Reinbacher never got his elusive Stanley Cup. He did play in 93 postseason games, had 1 run to the Stanley Cup final. He scored 10 goals and 30 assists for 40 points in those 93 games. He was a plus 11 with 53 penalty minutes, shooting at 5.7%, half a percent higher than the regular season. 2 of his 10 goals were game winners, 2 on the power play, 10 points on the power play as well, 1 shorthanded goal, 4 shorthanded points, averaging 24.5 minutes per night in the postseason, as high as 27.5 minutes as well, 2,276 minutes played. He threw 168 hits over those 93 games and blocked 120 shots, 73 giveaways to 43 takeaways. Now, of course, league stats will look very different a couple decades from now, but if we were to take these numbers in the EA simulation and put them into all-time history, both in the league and in Habs history, Reinbacher's 1,411 games played would tie him for 36th all-time with Harry Howell, and his 623 points would put him around 331st all-time with Radim Vrbata and Elmer Lach. If we are talking about just defensemen, though, those 1,411 games would tie him for 12th all-time, once again with Harry Howell. And his 623 points would be the 40th most all-time in NHL history by defensemen, ahead of Guy Lapointe and behind Teppo Numminen. Finally, Reinbacher's 2,420 hits would put him 14th all-time, currently ahead of Nick Foligno and behind Zdeno Chara. And his 1,853 blocked shots would put him 10th all-time, ahead of Ryan Suter and behind Ron Hainsey. And if we were just to quickly look where Reinbacher ranks all-time for the Canadiens organization, his 1,258 games played would actually tie him for the most of all time with Henri Richard. But in this world, Nick Suzuki and I think Slavkovsky and also Caulfield passed that 1,258 mark. His 582 points would also be the 16th most all-time, ahead of Mario Tremblay and behind Claude Provost. But again, Slavkovsky, Hudson, Caulfield, Suzuki, a lot of other names that would be within that top 15 as well. And I think it goes without saying that Reinbacher holds a couple of franchise records. 2,242 hits as a Montreal Canadien, just over 1,000 more than the current franchise leader, who is Alexei Emelin. And his 1,658 blocked shots are about 500 more than the current franchise leader, who is Andrei Markov. Aside from those records, I'm sure that Reinbacher's in the top 15, top 20 for a bunch of other things in Habs history, but he is the franchise leader in hits, in blocked shots, and he's up there for most games played as well. A legend on the Habs blue line, and you would think that number 64 would absolutely be in the rafters. And thus concludes the career of David Reinbacher, ladies and gentlemen, spanning from 2023 to 2042, making almost $175 million along the way. He broke into the scene playing with Laval in the AHL, a full 72-game season, 31 points, a ton of hits, a ton of blocks on that top pair. Made the jump to the NHL in his second year in North America, immediately playing top 4 minutes and top 2 before you knew it. 1,258 games played with the Canadiens, the most all-time by a defenseman. He added 125 goals, 457 assists for 582 points. In the postseason, unfortunately, only 77 games played over those 16 seasons with the Canadiens. A lot of struggles in the beginning of his career. 77 games played, 8 goals, 25 assists, and 33 points. After those 16 seasons with the Canadiens, people thought that he may have been done, the game taking a toll on his body, but he goes to Minnesota, plays 2 great seasons with the Wild, 153 games played, 12 goals, 29 assists, and 41 points. One postseason berth where he registered 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points in 16 games. Bringing his career totals, ladies and gentlemen, to 1,411 games played over 18 NHL seasons, 137 goals, 486 assists, and 623 points. Add in 2,420 hits, 1,853 blocked shots. If you condense it all down into an 82-game average, Reinbacher could be counted on average, for a 36-point year, 8 goals, 28 assists, usually in the peak of his career, usually in that 40 to 50 range. Also for the ice time, averaging 23.5 minutes of ice time per night, at his best, always at 25 minutes plus. Add in an average of 141 hits per season and 108 blocked shots, and he is up there with some of the best in the league right now. When I tried to find a comparable, I think it's pretty comparable to what Darnell Nurse does. Also, in some ways, like a less offensive Roman Josi or Miro Heiskanen or even Thomas Chabot. So if that's who Reinbacher can be, Canadiens fans should be very excited for that. In the postseason as well, in Reinbacher's career, 93 games played, 10 goals, 30 assists, 40 points, over 7 postseason berths. His most notable career honors include being the Montreal Canadiens franchise leader in games played by a defenseman, most hits all time, and most blocks all time, as well as being a Stanley Cup finalist in 2035, that Game 7 overtime heartbreak. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the career of David Reinbacher. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave a like. Leave a comment with what you thought was the craziest part of the simulation. And be sure to let me know which player's career would you like to see simulated next. Subscribe so that you won't miss out on any of that, as well as our other series here on the channel, including our NHL 23 franchise mode series. As a Canadiens fan myself, I'm very excited to see what Reinbacher does in the Habs organization, especially if I can come back to this video in 10, 15 years and see how things match up, especially comparing his career to Matvei Michkov. But if Reinbacher can put up these kinds of numbers while the Canadiens organization isn't cursed by EA voodoo, I would be very pleased. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to enjoy the career simulation. If you want to see more simulations, check out the end card here at the end of this video, including our most recent Connor Bedard Blackhawks simulation and last season's Slavkovsky Canadiens simulation. If you enjoyed this, you'd enjoy going through that whole playlist. And I thank you once again for watching and look forward to seeing you again in the next one.